How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
Uh, how was your ride up?
Very pleasant.
Mm,
No traffic. It was a beautiful day and just thoroughly enjoyed the ride. There's
mm,
something about traveling that I
mm,
enjoy,
mm,
and especially when it's a non backup traffic
mm.
travel day, which
And
that's what it was today.
and so you were coming from Amosville? Amos.
Originally from Amosville, stopped off in Edgewood,
Mm.
then to Northeast, and then here in
How's it
Delaware.
how's it been living in Amosville?
It's been interesting. It's been interesting. I can appreciate how beautiful it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
It's just really, really gorgeous. And we're perhaps maybe 25 miles from Shenandoah Valley
Mm-hmm.
and Skyline Drive, where the actual entrance to Skyline Drive,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just really beautiful. Um, it's when I say it's an interesting place to live, it's interesting because it's rural,
Mm-hmm.
and for the most part, you either were born and raised there, or you've moved there because you've retired and you just want to relax, chill out, drink your cup of coffee in the
Mm-hmm.
morning, read your newspaper, watch the news, and just relax for the rest of your life because
Mm-hmm.
you feel that you've worked diligently
Yeah.
for most of it. So, but it, it's just a really beautiful place to live, but yet at the same time very rural,
Mm-hmm.
and where you have cows and
Yeah.
chickens and the deer that just take its time walking across the road.
Mm-hmm.
They're very domesticated out there, but the beauty of it all is really its most excellent quality.
Mm-hmm. And that rural living, how's it been as far as how do you feel about the commutes and everything, having to drive far to get to the market and
Well, that's not my favorite
but you adjust, I
aspect.
guess.
I adjusted, but personally, I'm one of those persons that I don't really do commute very well.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, if I have to go out, I have a list,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And my list is going to include everything that I need to do and everything that I need to do while I'm out
Mm-hmm.
on the right side of the road leaving
Mm-hmm.
and the left side of the road
That's good.
coming
That's
back.
good
I don't
planning.
cross over the other side.
Mm-hmm.
If because I'm thinking about it in terms of the efficiency of it,
Yeah.
and when you live rural, you're going to travel at least for me,
Mm-hmm.
12 or 13 miles to get to a supermarket,
Mm-hmm.
and 30 miles to get to a shopping center
Mm-hmm.
or a mall,
Right.
and 50 to get to a really, really good restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I said, I'm not really in favor of commuting,
Mm-hmm.
but when I have to, I try to utilize my time by listening to a teaching or something, or
Mm-hmm.
make some telephone calls that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have time to make before. Because one of the challenges in rural areas, even though we have Wi-Fi
Mm-hmm.
in Amosville, extreme weather, be it heat, cold, leaves falling from the tree
Mm-hmm.
in the fall, it affects the Wi-Fi.
Right.
So, and everything is Wi-Fi generated, be it our mobile phone, home phone.
Mm-hmm.
So, therefore, many times when I leave out, one of the things that I'll do is make those telephone calls that I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't able to make while I was in the house
Mm-hmm.
because the calls
Service.
kept
Yeah.
dropping. Yeah,
Right.
the service, was
Mm-hmm.
interrupted and so forth.
And you had talked about uh, going out, but I guess you have to plan even further ahead as far as not wanting to. You have to plan out like, okay, so when like this, it's
Hmm.
Monday. and I might need something on Thursday, so like I can get all of this out of the way Monday rather than going out again Tuesday and then going out again. So you kind of have to
Mm-hmm.
plan that way as well, because if you got a market right around the corner, you can just ride to the market and get what you need as you need it. You can if it's only like a 5 minute drive, where you could walk to the market
Right.
rather than having to take a long trip just to get to the market. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Because it always feels as though it's a day's journey. And
Mm-hmm.
when I say that, you can't always anticipate what kind of traffic conditions you're going to encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And timing is important as well, because if you leave in the morning, then you'll be trapped behind, not trapped, but you would encounter the school bus, and each time they stop, you have to stop.
Right.
If you're coming home around 2:30, between 2:30 and 4, you're going to encounter the school buses taking the kids back home. And then 5 o'clock, you're going to encounter more of a bulk of the traffic that's coming back from work. So, the whole timing issue factors in terms of what you do, what time you do it, and so forth, if you want to make the best use of your time.
Yeah. And so, we talked a little bit about traffic, but you're originally from Baltimore, right?
Originally Baltimore City, yes.
How well? I do want to ask about how Baltimore was when you were growing up, but also I also want to talk about traveling and how traveling has changed your perception, like opened you up more, like rather than I guess living the way that most Baltimoreans that have stayed in Baltimore for like most of their lives, like how has that developed you? So I don't know which one to start with.
Well, we'll start with the fact that I was born and raised in Baltimore City. And having been born in Baltimore City, I actually was born in the house. I was born in the house on Central Avenue. And at that time, doctors, they did make house visits. I mean, there are some, your concierge doctors who still make visits, but you pay for those.
Were these black doctors? Or
Yes, he was black. He was black. His name was Dr. Lee Foster.
Would white doctors do that, or was that like, was there any type of segregation, I guess, when it came to health?
I don't really know. Tim, because I don't know. He was my mom's doctor, and my sister and 2 brothers all were born at Johns Hopkins Hospital. So it just happened that the situation warranted that Dr. Lee Foster had to come to the house, and I was born there in my parents' bedroom, and lived there until age 3. And from at age 3, my mom's decided she no longer wanted to live on Central Avenue, and she had gone to a realtor. His name was William Berger on East North Avenue. And she had gone up, and at that time, there were homes for sale on Homewood Avenue. And my mother loved that house, and I understand why. I mean, at that time, what was a row house was a large home with a front yard, a front porch, living room, dining room, bathroom, kitchen, back porch, backyard, basement, second floor, master bedroom, middle bedroom, bathroom, and a bedroom, stairs from the second floor down into the kitchen, stairs upstairs, large bedroom in the front, 2 small bedrooms, and a roof that we could walk out on, where my brothers, as they got older, had pigeons that they grew. And Oliver Cromwell Elementary School was right up the street, and that's where I went to elementary school. And it was beautiful. I mean, it was beautiful, tree lined and everything. And we just played. I mean, we were jacks and Chinese checkers and dodgeball and stick man and so forth. I mean, we just had, our games that we played. My brothers, they had dogs, and that stayed in the backyard because we didn't grow up with dogs in the home. And as I said, they had their pigeon coop and so forth, and we had fun in our community. As I said, we played those games together, and we expanded from our block, 2100 block of Homewood Avenue. Then we got to know the people on 23rd Street, on 24th Street, and as we got older, it spread it out. Going from that to Greenmount Recreation Center, where there was another place where I grew up, and having counselors who then we had the opportunity to learn tap, ballet.
Was all of this free?
Yes,
Really?
this was all free. Then the summer we went to summer camp.
Do you know is that still a thing in Baltimore now?
No.
Are those things available?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah,
It's
right.
really
It doesn't seem
unfortunate
like
that it died. It really did.
Do you have any idea, like, what might have caused that?
Unfortunately, when the drugs poured in. See, so we're looking at, I think 63 was when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. 68 was Dr. Martin Luther King. And that's when the riots and the damage was then done to Greenmount Avenue. All up from North Avenue, which North Avenue was actually a hub. And when I say it was a hub, that was the area where the drugs and at that particular time, as I recall, the drugs weren't as big. And when I say it wasn't as big, we weren't exposed to it. And so we didn't really know about it. Okay.
Right.
But it was number running. And so for the most part, anyone who...
What was number running? That was somebody would give you their lottery numbers and you would go to the lottery.
Well, they weren't called they weren't called, it wasn't the lottery.
Oh, this was
this was an organized means of contacting whoever the person was that initiated it, where you would go in and you would take $1, $2, whatever, and you would say, this is the number that I want to play. And other people did the very same thing.
Okay.
But it was really considered illegal. And the other thing was gambling. Okay, so they were the biggies, because our next door neighbor, they had a gambling group that met in their house, and if they felt as though they had been cheated or what have you, that's where you would have fights with knives, and some people had guns, but no way like what we're experiencing now.
It must have been the autobiography of Malcolm X, I think. And this guy named, can't remember the guy's name, one of his friends, I think, or associates, but he talked about the running numbers, and he would talk about like how brilliant a lot of the people that would do the number runnings were, because they could remember so many different people's numbers and just be able to, go pick up the people's, like, whatever their order was, but they would keep it all in their head, and then they would go down and tell exactly what those numbers were. It's crazy to think that, like, some people, had that ability.
Absolutely.
But they might not have been able to put it into, getting a math degree or a PhD in mathematics. True. If they could, use that type of, if they had that memory to do that, they could have used it, in order to do something else.
Absolutely. Which is really unfortunate, because in truth, they really did have the ability. They just didn't know that it was something that they could do. I believe that had a lot to do with the choices that people made and have and are still making.
So I've been reading Eddie Brown's. When I was valeting at ABC Services, working at the Magdalena. He's the one that owns the Magdalena and the Brown Capital Management, black guy. But I'm reading his book, and he was talking about how when he was growing up, he was doing, what's it called, bootlegging, like selling liquor. Because when he was younger, like that was when alcohol was illegal, I think, or something like that. It was, but he was pretty much working with his uncle, and he would do like a lot of the like running. Like he would run the, I think it was alcohol. He was running alcohol to his to whoever his clients were, his house. But I think it was eventually maybe one of his family members, they stepped in, and I think they told his mom, they talked to his mother, and they were like, yeah, Eddie, he's been, getting in trouble, and we don't know if he's going to end up dead or, in jail because he's, running around with his uncle. So his mom had like finally stepped in. But you had talked a little bit about exposure. So it's like not knowing what's available. He actually spoke on that as well in the book. He was pretty much saying that if he didn't have the resources, like had people that were stepping in, he would have been, the same way. But now he's managing billions of dollars. So like you were just talking about, a lot of it can be just your environment. Like you don't necessarily know what you're capable of, or what opportunities are out there if you aren't exposed to it. You only know what you see, rather than you could be like totally oblivious to all of these other opportunities and things that you could do with your brain, rather than doing certain things that are illegal.
And I think a real part to overcome is the feeling of low self-esteem, low self-worth, because if you don't feel as though you're worth anything, even though you're fully gifted and talented with many abilities, but if your inner belief is that you can't accomplish anything, that's what you'll believe. And if you have voices that support that, then that's really what you'll follow. So and we saw that within the community, but it was still charged with opportunity as far as education was concerned, and as far as recreation was concerned. And we just played a lot. You know what I'm saying? We had that going for us as well, and we were outside a lot. So it was most enjoyable. And at the time when we moved there, I think we were perhaps the 5th black family on the block of Homewood Avenue. And I mean, that's from 2100 all the way up to maybe 2149, and then houses on the other side of the street. But somehow still, I think at age 3, I didn't, I just wasn't that much, I wasn't focused, because there wasn't a black-white language in our home as I grew up.
That was
so
also what
it
I
didn't
wanted
factor.
to ask. So growing up playing Chinese checkers and hopscotch and all of that, jacks, right? Was it integrated? Like, were some of your friends white, or was it was predominantly black that was living in those areas? Okay.
Yeah, it was. Well, let me say this. There were still quite a few whites, but what happened was the blacks just gravitated towards one another. And I think that from a racial perspective, perhaps, my kindergarten teacher, her name was Miss Onion, and she was really, really mean. She was real mean. But I didn't think of her as being racist. I just thought she was a mean person. So I pretty much grew up just dealing with people based upon their behavior, and not based upon the color of their skin. You know what I'm saying? So that was also a real factor in terms of my experience growing up in the community. But then I moved from Homewood Avenue at age 18. So I had my own apartment then. So then that was an entirely different experience. 18? At 18. Yeah, when I graduated out of school, I got my own apartment. 705 Exeter Hall, 2nd floor.
What
apartment.
were you doing for work at the time in order to?
At the time, I actually had gotten a job at. I was working part-time. That was a part-time job working at a shoe store. That was like my first kind of, okay, I need a job here. And then I started working for CMP Telephone Company as an intercept operator. And the challenge with that is I worked from 6 p.m. until 12 a.m. And that was a real challenge, in that I had to walk a distance. We're talking St. Paul Street all the way down to, I forget what street it was that I had to catch the number 8 bus to get home, and it was dark and it was, at night and all. But it was a really, really good job, and I liked it.
And working the job that you had, it was affordable as far as the apartment? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Because I was just reading an article about it's hard now, or I think it's no. I don't know if it's the statistic is like completely true, but they were talking about how no apartments are affordable, like to minimum wage workers. So like there's no place where like people can pretty much live working off of minimum wage. Like it's like almost impossible for people to live off of minimum wage now.
Well, what's unfortunate about that has everything to do with the quality of living at the places that are affordable for people who are minimum wage. See, that's the part. I think that if there's ownership, if you own a building, and I know that there are challenges that come with it, but ownership requires and responsibility. Therefore, you keep the building up. You don't neglect it because of what the residents and the tenants pay. And that's a part of the challenge. Right. I think that's one of the reasons that people say that minimum wage earners, there is no housing that they can afford, because what they can afford, they don't necessarily want, and they don't want to have to raise their children in it either.
That makes sense.
So I think it's an irresponsibility on the part of home ownership, across the board.
Yeah. But I think I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the relationship counseling and some of the stuff that you've been working, or life coaching and like in that area. So I don't know, how did you get into that?
Well, I'm a strong believer in that each and every one of us are gifted. We have talents and abilities. We've been endowed with them. And with that comes an innateness. There is just something that you just do it. You know what I'm saying? Right. You don't. It's you doing what you love, and whether you're paid for it or not, right, you do it. And so I found myself in that particular place whereby I could meet a stranger, and in no time at all, they were then talking with me about their life. Were talking with me about some issue. And I just stepped into it. It began to grow because I then had the opportunity whereby my husband and me did marriage ministry. And in that marriage ministry, our initial leaders were psychologists, Ron and Nancy Rocky. The concept behind their program, which was called Created for Success in Marriage. And the understanding was that the agenda of the enemy is to thoroughly convince us that we have no worth and value. Because at the end of the day, the greatest challenge that any individual has is just that. They don't have any worth and they don't have any value. And messaging that they've heard all their lives will just reinforce that. And as we have talked before our segment, how that even a lie, once it's fed, the brain will support it. So there's no fight against that. We as individuals have to stand up and say, no, that's not the truth. And what this program, Created for Success, was all about, it was all about our relationships based upon our primary caregivers, our relationship, mother, father, siblings, and in marriage. And it so ignited something on the inside of me that I said, at the end of the day, every individual alive, the basic need to be loved, to be heard, and to be accepted. That's it. Those are the basic needs of every individual. And when they're not met, then there is this need to find significance many times outside of ourselves, when in fact all of it is on the inside of us. So a part of, or stepping forward with that, had everything to do with, in my opinion, the power of coaching. Because there's were the Rockies were on the end of psychology. Well, coaching to me is far more beneficial, because in coaching, you're not telling a person what they should do or how they should do it. Coaching allows you to find out from an individual, what is it that you want? Who do you believe yourself to be? And what do you want to accomplish in your life? And what can I do to help you to accomplish that goal? That's what the root of coaching is all about.
Right.
On the marriage end, that had everything to do with the various aspects of marriage that are necessary in order to have a healthy marriage. And then on the end of the which is the piece that I brought in there, on the money end, the money end had everything to do with my own challenge with money, because I didn't realize that we have a relationship with money. We either love it or we hate it.
And not only your relationship with money personally, but the relationship with money within a relationship.
Yes.
So one person might have a certain relationship with money, and the other person might have a relationship
Absolutely.
with money. So trying to figure out that balance between the two, that can also be some challenge.
Absolutely. People will sooner talk about their sex life than talk about money. It is that kind of conversation that will incite something on the inside of you. It's this thing, it's like that is a private space that many people don't want others to enter in. But what's difficult, or what's becomes the biggest challenge with money, is that the motivation could very well be greed. We have to keep a balance. So my coaching is get your relationship brain unscrambled. That's what, get your relationship brain unscrambled, because all of life is all about relationship. It's just all about relationship.
And you had mentioned something about your self-worth within your relationship. I think I had watched, I don't know if I watched it, but I heard, I think, about Will Smith, and he was talking about within his relationship, he was pretty much saying that him and Jada are individuals, and they both have their own personal lives, and they both love themselves enough, and then they come together and they do things together based off of that. So I guess, what's your standpoint on that? Like, so should you, like, how much do you need to love? Is it more so, I guess, should your focus be more so loving yourself, and then because you love yourself so much, you're able to love another individual? Like, which one comes first, I guess? Do you need to love yourself and then you can love, other, like someone else fully, or can someone else teach you how to love yourself,
I understand that question, and I would say, okay, as an individual, let's just say, as an individual before God, we all stand before God as an individual, which means that my behavior, my actions are personally on me. They're not the responsibility of anything outside of me. I'm responsible for my own individual behavior. Okay? In marriage, in order to have a healthy marriage, you first have to be a whole and healthy person. Because if you're not, then the goal is to expect that that person in relationship with you is going to fix you and make you better. That cannot happen. It's an individual decision that we have to make for ourselves. So when people say you have to love yourself in order to love another person, I agree with that to the extent that loving yourself means that you're going to be a healthy person. Because what one person feels is love may not be love to another person.
Right.
And you loving yourself may just be pure selfishness. I'm not saying that about Will Smith. I'm just saying that everything has to do with what an individual's belief system is. What you believe, if you believe it, you believe it. And you believe, well, I love myself. This is the reason that I look at me. I behave this way because I love myself. Therefore, you have to accept what I do and I accept what you do. But that doesn't necessarily say that you love that person. Being a healthy individual means that you place the value on yourself, because we do have to value ourselves. If we don't value ourselves, then we'll just do anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you value yourself, you're going to make the decisions that are not always the easiest decision, but it's the decision that is going to bring about the best good for you, which in fact, whoever, say for instance your wife or your girlfriend or whomsoever, you value that person. And valuing actually means listening to what it is that they're saying, accepting who they are. That really equates more to loving a person than just the words that people say.
Right.
I love you. You know, it has to have substance to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And the person walks away feeling valued, not walk away feeling flattered. See, flattery is an entirely different thing than walking away feeling as though value has been placed on me. That's really what matters.
Right. Yeah.
What we're seeing in our I'm just going to use this as an example. What we're seeing in our streets today has a lot to do with people who have been devalued.
Yep.
Therefore, they don't place the value on themselves, and they conduct themselves in ways that is a